I always knew something was off the moment I found the French SIM card sitting neatly in our silverware drawer, tucked right between the melon baller and the garlic press, as if burner phone accessories were part of some new Michelin recipe. I stared at it for a full 10 seconds, like it might explain itself, maybe offer a haiku in broken French about betrayal and prepaid minutes. The label read Bouygues Telecom, prepay, and the damn thing still had its plastic wrap on, like a gift from the universe to say, "Congratulations, cuckold. You've leveled up." I didn't touch it, not out of fear, but because I knew Mia. She wouldn't leave evidence lying around unless she either wanted to get caught or thought I was too dull to connect the dots. Both were insulting. That morning had started like any other. French roast brewing, mild arguments about whether to keep the cat during the move, and her humming something pretentious from Edith Piaf while drying her hair. I just finished scanning the translated property contract for our place in Bordeaux, meticulously going line by line with the legal precision of someone who's read more privacy policies than novels, when I went into the kitchen to grab a spoon. That's when I saw the drawer slightly ajar. Not chaotic, just subtly wrong. Like someone had entered my mind and nudged one of the mental picture frames ever so slightly crooked. That drawer was always flush. Always. My hand went to fix it, and there it was, the SIM card, nestled beside a bent lemon zester. I blinked once. Then again. I felt no heat rise in my chest, no wave of nausea. Just a cold, efficient shift in gear. Mia was in the shower, probably lathering up and dreaming of sun-drenched Provence afternoons with a man who quotes Sartre and probably wears his shirts unbuttoned too low. I didn't confront her. Instead, I walked calmly to my office, opened my laptop, and began the first of what would be many silent operations. A man like me doesn't burn down a house in rage. He slowly rewires the electricity and waits for the spark. I searched our recent browser history. Nothing obvious. I checked our shared cloud drive. No breadcrumbs. But then, like a drunken magician revealing his trick, she'd left her travel documents open on her tablet, right there on the nightstand. I tapped it open, using her fingerprint while the steam still fogged the bathroom mirror. What I saw was surgical in its cruelty. 2 flight reservations. Mine to Paris. Hers, a one-way to Marseille, 3 hours apart, different terminals, different dreams. Underneath that was a hotel reservation for 2 at a boutique and called Les Amants de Minuit. I googled the name, and when the homepage loaded, I almost laughed. A refuge for secret love, discretion guaranteed, it boasted in cursive font over a background of silk sheets and vintage wine glasses. Of course, she had picked a place that marketed adultery as an art form. Classy. I scrolled further and saw the name on the reservation, Mia Laurent and Daniel Delacourt. Not me. Not Greg, her husband of 14 years, but Daniel, the old boyfriend she once described as too impulsive, too romantic, not enough spine for real life. Well, apparently the spine had grown back, and now they were planning midnight picnics in Marseille while I sipped Chablis solo in Paris wondering why her connecting flight never landed. Again, I didn't react. I simply copied every file, reservation, confirmation, invoice, and emailed them to myself with the subject line, proof of future ghosting. Then I did something rather beautiful. I made us both a fresh pot of tea and placed her cup gently beside her laptop, just as she liked it. Chamomile with a single drop of honey. No lemon, she said it killed the subtlety. I sat across from her when she finally emerged, towel wrapped around her head like some fake French duchess, and we chatted about real estate agents and embassy appointments like 2 people who hadn't just crossed into the eye of the hurricane. She smiled at me with those soft, rehearsed eyes, and I smiled back. But behind mine, the gears were turning. This wasn't going to be a confrontation. This was going to be a campaign. She wanted Marseille? She could have it, but not the way she dreamed. Not with comfort. Not with freedom. Not with status. Her name, her future, her romantic little escape plan. I would unravel it all without raising my voice. Because while she was daydreaming about vineyard selfies and love letters and cobblestone cafes, I was about to turn her French fantasy into an immigration nightmare. And it all started with a SIM card in a drawer no one ever uses. I used to believe that when someone loves you, they don't need to constantly announce it. You just feel it, like gravity, always there whether you acknowledge it or not. With Mia, it had always been that way. She didn't fuss over me, but she was with me. We had rhythms, little rituals, a comfortable orbit. French toast Sundays. Evening walks. Shared glances during boring Zoom calls. And for years, it felt solid. Real. We even joked that we were each other's retirement projects moving to France, buying that small vineyard near Bordeaux, escaping the chaos of American life to sip wine under lavender skies. We picked out a house together. Research visa requirements. She even signed up for French language immersion classes, claiming she didn't want to sound like a tourist forever. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have a partner not just in love, but in strategy. Someone who wanted to build a future as much as I did. But then, like hairline cracks in antique porcelain, things began to shift. Not with slamming doors or late-night fights. No. It started with the silence between the notes. She stopped singing while doing the dishes. That alone probably wouldn't mean much to anyone else, but to me, it was like walking into a room and realizing the ticking of the clock had stopped. She started reading more personal transformation books, titles like Boundaries for Women Who Feel Too Much and Your Inner Flame. She said it was about preparing for the move, emotionally. I supported it. I bought her a reading lamp. She said she needed time alone on weekends to let go of old versions of herself. At first, I thought, great. She's evolving. But slowly, those weekends became off limits. I'd ask to take a drive or go to the farmer's market, and she'd respond with, I just need to be with myself right now. Like I was some old sweater that no longer fit. Still warm, but out of style. She changed her phone lock code, said it was for work privacy, even though her work was freelance editing and most of her clients emailed anyway. Her social media accounts went dark to me. I'm just curating who sees what, she explained with a practiced smile. Then she started wearing perfume again. Subtle, expensive stuff. Not overpowering, just new. A scent I'd never smelled on her before. I commented on it once, and she said, "Oh, it's just something I've had forever. I'm surprised you never noticed." She laughed, but her eyes didn't. They scanned me for a reaction. I gave her none. I was trying so hard not to seem suspicious, because I didn't want to be suspicious. I wanted to believe we were still on the same team. That all of this was just a phase. That maybe France was making her nervous, and this was how she coped, with independence, with solitude, with scented distractions. One night, I found a handwritten note tucked into the back of her journal while cleaning the living room, half a sentence scribbled hastily. Don't forget to delete history. He knows how to dig. It stopped me. Froze me. I stared at it for minutes, wondering if it was part of a book plot she was editing, or a joke, or something older from years back. But the handwriting was fresh. I didn't confront her. I simply tucked it back in and carried on, heart quietly pounding in my chest like a countdown. A few days later, a package arrived, expensive luggage, 2 pieces of high-end Italian leather. I thought it was for our move. I was about to get excited when I noticed the shipping label was addressed only to her, not to both of us as usual. No note inside. When I asked, she casually said, just something I treated myself to. We deserve nice things, don't we? That's when I realized she'd started saying I less and me more. Her sentences used to end in, we'll figure it out. Now they ended in, I've got plans, I've made arrangements, I'm meeting someone for a business thing. Business thing. Always vague. Always just enough to seem legitimate. I still wanted to trust her, so I told myself it was stress. That she was just nervous about uprooting her life. That maybe this distance was her way of clinging to identity before merging with mine in another country. But then I found the train ticket stub in the trash, Marseille to Paris, one way, dated 3 weeks prior. She had never mentioned going to Marseille. Not once. And that's when the last layer of peace peeled off me like old wallpaper. I didn't ask. I didn't scream. I just started watching more closely. Her smile was still there, but it no longer reached her eyes. Her laughter sounded like it was rehearsed in another room before she entered mine. And I realized, chillingly, that Mia hadn't been drifting away. She had already left. What I was seeing was a hologram, smiling, cooking, pretending, while her real self had packed its emotional bags and walked out the door weeks ago. And I had just started noticing the echo. It happened on a Wednesday, the most unremarkable of days, gray sky, mild drizzle, lukewarm coffee left half-drunk on the counter like an afterthought. I was in the study, reviewing our visa packet for the French consulate when I heard her voice in the living room. Soft, syrupy, more melodic than it ever sounded when she spoke to me. The words themselves weren't clear at first, just fragments through the open door, but the tone was unmistakable, cozy, giggly, as if she were 17 again, not 45 and married. I assumed it was a call with one of her old friends, until I caught a name. Daniel. The name sliced through the air like cold steel. I didn't move. Didn't twitch. I just let it settle in the back of my mind like a loaded round waiting in the chamber. She was pacing, unaware of how easily the sound carried, and then I heard her repeat something, word for word, something I had said to her the night before. You look like a painting this morning, like you stepped out of an old French film. I had said that over breakfast, watching her sip her tea while wearing that deep green wrap she always loved. I thought it was a moment. I thought it mattered. But here she was now, whispering it to him. Him. I didn't make a sound. I just turned my head, ever so slightly, toward the door frame and watched her reflection in the glass of the patio door. Her mouth curled up at the edges, cheeks lifted, fingers absently twirling her necklace, the same way she used to when we were still real. I could hear her say, "No, he doesn't suspect anything. He's focused on the vineyard stuff. He's not wired that way." I smiled. Just a twitch. Because I am wired that way. She just forgot. Or maybe she never really knew. I didn't get up. I didn't interrupt. I just reached for my phone and opened the house Wi-Fi admin panel. Mia had 2 devices on the network, her phone and her tablet. I tapped into the logs. The tablet had synced recently to a cloud storage account I hadn't seen before, an unfamiliar email address using her maiden name and a French domain. I traced the IP. Marseille. Of course. Of course it was. I quietly screen captured everything. Downloaded a few audio files from her recent VoIP logs, recordings of calls, each conveniently auto-archived. And then, I hit play. The most recent one was 2 days old. Her voice came through my AirPods, low and dreamy. "I can't wait to wake up next to you in Marseille. He'll be in Paris, sorting out the visa nonsense. We'll be long gone before he realizes it's not a joint plan anymore." That was it. Not a joint plan anymore. Like I was some expendable contractor in her escape fantasy. The voice on the other end was male. Calm. Smug. French accent like a cliché from a wine commercial. "He will not be a problem, yes?" She laughed. "Greg? No. He's passive. Focused on logistics. He doesn't know how to read people." That was when something inside me just shut down. Not broke. Not shattered. Just powered off. The part of me that wanted to salvage anything, the marriage, the vineyard, the idea of us, went silent. I closed the audio file, removed my AirPods, and placed them gently back into the case. Then I returned to my documents. I didn't flinch when she passed the study, blowing a kiss with the phone still warm in her palm, cheeks still flushed from a voice that wasn't mine. I didn't mention Marseille, or Daniel, or the recycled compliments she dressed up like fresh affection. I didn't ask about the fake email address, the burner SIM, or the new luggage she tried to pretend wasn't packed already in her head. I simply nodded and said, "Tea's getting cold." That's it. Because I had crossed a threshold where feelings became data, where betrayal wasn't heartbreak, it was intel. Mia thought she was dealing with a fool wrapped in a cardigan. But what she didn't see was that I'd already moved beyond pain and straight into calculus. She'd played her cards. All of them. Loudly. Carelessly. And I was the man she thought didn't know how to read people. The man who still held the keys to the visa filings, the property contract, the transfer deeds, the joint account access. She saw me as stationary. But I was about to become invisible. And that is always far more dangerous. I didn't confront her the next morning. I made her coffee instead, strong, dark, just the way she liked it, topped with that little cinnamon swirl she always pretended was an accident of the hand, even though she practiced it like calligraphy. She smiled and kissed my cheek, and I smiled back with the warmth of a man sharpening a blade behind his back. That day, while she went out for errands, I began phase 1. I logged into our joint banking portal and created a filtered export of the last 6 months. No flagged transactions, nothing overt, until I isolated charges listed as EM Translations Ltd. And traced the payments to a service in Lyon that specializes in immigration paperwork and dual citizenship filings. She had used my name, my address, and most intriguingly, her own contact number. I cross-checked the invoice ID with the company's open access directory. Her application was active. She had paid for expedited document review under her maiden name. That told me something critical. She wasn't planning to leave quietly. She was planning to erase me from the picture before I even had time to realize I'd been cropped out. I didn't flinch. I emailed the agency from an alias account I set up years ago for client vetting, used a VPN, wrote in French, pretended to be a curious fiancé wanting to verify application timelines. Got a response within 12 hours. Mia Lauron, application pending. Submission included notarized declaration of marital separation. Not divorce. Separation. Legal semantics that wouldn't raise red flags unless someone knew how to read them. Which I did. Next step, digital reconnaissance. I accessed the router log from my phone, Our home system had a bill and device tracker. I created a daily download of connection timestamps for every device she owned. Tablet, phone, laptop. Then I compared usage hours against her alibis. When she said she was volunteering at the shelter, her tablet was streaming videos from a boutique hotel in the 4th arrondissement of Marseille. Every Thursday. For weeks in a row. Location locked IP. I traced the MAC address to that IP through a diagnostic backdoor our ISP had forgotten to close years ago. I didn't need spyware. I just needed diligence. I changed nothing. Said nothing. Waited. But I needed more. So I called Jules, an old friend of mine who used to work in logistics compliance for one of the embassies. He owed me a favor. I asked if he could check if any appointment files were opened under my name in the French consulate system. The answer? Yes. 2 appointments booked, one by me, months ago, and another more recently by someone claiming to be my representative. Mia. She had used her login to request a secondary consultation under my name, paired with hers, but with a different address. Paris, not Bordeaux. Quietly, I canceled it using consular admin access I still had from a training grant we did years ago. She wouldn't find out until the day of the meeting. Meanwhile, I started testing her. Not directly, no accusations. Just misdirections. I told her I was moving some funds into a French account early to start paying property taxes. She nodded too quickly. I said I had chosen a bank in Marseille for convenience. She paused for half a second, half asterisk, then said, "Oh, is that necessary?" Not, "Why Marseille?" Not, "I thought we were doing everything in Bordeaux." Just a glitch in the matrix, but enough. So I dug deeper. I created a fake Facebook profile of a wine distributor and followed her account. Sent a message asking about potential partnerships, nothing flirtatious, just opportunity-based. She responded within 2 hours. "Happy to discuss collaborations, let's talk soon. Can I call you on this number?" She sent her own phone number. Not the joint business line. The one she kept separate. I had her. But I didn't want her to know that yet. I wanted her to think she still had control, that her little mosaic of lies was still artfully arranged. Meanwhile, I watched everything unravel beneath her. I started using questions as probes. "Have you decided what books you want to take when we move?" I asked one night. She replied, "Just the ones I'll need for the Marseille project." Her mouth flinched as she said it. She tried to cover it by sipping tea. But I saw it. She thought she'd said Bordeaux. She didn't even realize she slipped. And that was the moment I knew. She had mentally relocated already. Emotionally moved in with someone else. She was just using my shell, my name, my paperwork, my resources to bridge the gap. That's why I started scheduling private viewings with Bordeaux real estate agents without her. Told them I was adjusting investment plans. Set up a personal P.O. box. Rerouted my mail. Slowly, surgically, I began removing myself from our joint infrastructure. She didn't notice. She was too busy rehearsing her grand exit. But I wasn't just watching her now. I was dismantling the scaffolding beneath her little escape plan, one bolt at a time. She didn't realize that her future was now dependent on a system I was already shutting down. She still thought she was the hunter. But she had become the prey, and I had no intention of letting her hear the snap of the trap until her world went dark. I invited her to a wine tasting, one of those quiet, high-end events with linen-covered tables and an imported sommelier flown in from Burgundy, the kind of environment where everything smells of quiet prestige and polished wood. Mia wore that black dress she always saves for elegant evenings, the one she once told me made her feel unapologetically expensive. I complimented her, poured her wine, and kept my expression unreadable as she chattered on about vineyards and varietals and soil pH levels like she hadn't spent the past 2 months planning to vanish into Marseille with a man who probably didn't even own a corkscrew. The tasting was hosted at a private club I had access to through an old colleague, tight list, no outsiders, small enough that I knew every face in the room except one. A man seated 3 tables over. French, lean, pretentious jawline, flipping a wine glass with the kind of wrist action that suggested he used to play piano for attention. Mia didn't notice him at first, but he noticed her. The mistake came when she turned her head slightly and their eyes locked for just 1 second longer than 2 strangers should. I didn't react. I let it bake. Let the pressure build slowly. Then I stood and politely thanked our host, said I'd arranged for a small private toast in the back lounge. She followed, still in performance mode, still thinking she was starring in the scene. I held the door open. The lights were dimmed low, fireplace flickering softly. One other couple was seated in the far corner. But on the center table, there was just a bottle of her favorite Bordeaux, a single wine glass, and a tablet already lit up with a paused video frame. Her, from behind, stepping into a boutique hotel in Marseille, hand in hand with Daniel. I picked up the tablet, hit play, and set it down again without saying a word. She laughed. Actually laughed. That's not what it looks like, she said, her voice cracking at the end like a hinge about to break. I didn't respond. I poured wine into the glass and pushed it toward her. She didn't touch it. We were just talking, she added. But her hands were trembling now, fingers fidgeting at the stem of the empty second glass that didn't exist. It was complicated, she continued. I just needed someone who, I cut her off with a glance, not a word. A single look that said careful. She shifted tactics. You were never there, Greg. Always planning, always organizing, but never listening. I felt alone even when you were next to me. I tilted my head slightly, amused at the performance. You know, you act like I set fire to the vineyard. Then came the mockery, her last attempt at dominance before the fear. Wow, Greg. Surveillance, really? I didn't know you had it in you. Maybe if you'd put that much passion into our relationship, I wouldn't have looked elsewhere. That's when I smiled. Just a slight movement. I leaned forward and said, quietly, I never needed to watch you, Mia. I just needed to stop believing you. She tried to hold eye contact, but it broke. Splintered. Her hands clenched the tablecloth. What now? She whispered. What are you going to do, humiliate me? Tell everyone. I shook my head. You've already done that for yourself. I'm just the witness. She went pale. Not dramatically, just enough to drain the flush from her cheeks. Greg, please, she said now, softer, less rehearsed. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Her voice cracked for real this time. The artificial layer peeled back. I stood up slowly and walked toward the door, not looking back. Then paused. Not for effect, but precision. Mia, I said, still facing away, this wasn't about you leaving. It was about you lying while still taking everything I gave. The future you wanted, it was built on my name, my time, and my silence. And all three expire tonight. Her breath caught. For the first time, she looked like she understood the depth of what she'd done. Not the affair. Not the sex. But the betrayal of intention. The hijacking of an entire life plan. And still, I didn't raise my voice. I opened the door. Held it. But I didn't walk through. I waited. Just long enough to let her sit there in the heat of her own unraveling, staring at a glass of wine she no longer deserved to taste. She followed me out of the lounge like a woman chasing the last train out of a burning city, her heels clicking too fast against the marble floor, breath shallow, eyes wild. But I kept walking, slow, steady, not turning once. We stepped into the quiet corridor outside, the velvet muffling our steps now, and that's when she snapped. You smothered me, she hissed, loud enough for a waiter to glance over. Always hovering, always planning, like I was your project instead of your wife. I didn't stop. She grabbed my arm. I let her. Didn't flinch. Say something, she demanded, but I said nothing. Her fingers dug in deeper, desperate for a reaction. This is what I mean, she said, voice rising, cracking. You think silence makes you strong? It makes you a coward. I turned my head then, just slightly, and looked her in the eye. No, Mia. It makes me finished. She stumbled backward like I'd slapped her. Finished, she spat. You think this is about you walking away? You think you're some tragic hero now? Her voice pitched higher, bitter with panic. You were boring, Greg. Safe. Predictable. I needed someone who made me feel alive again. I stared at her for a beat too long, then said, You mean someone who didn't know you well enough to see through you yet? She blinked, mouth open, trying to rally, but the words stuck like wet ash. This wouldn't have happened if you were a real man, she snarled next, reaching for cruelty now, throwing knives in the dark. A real man would have fought for me. You just disappear. Fade. I nodded slowly. A real woman wouldn't have needed to be chased. She would have chosen to stay. Her lips trembled. That one landed somewhere deep. She turned away, biting her cheek, fists clenched. You think this makes you better than me? She snapped, her voice almost childlike in its fury now. All your little moves, your passive-aggressive mind games. What do you want, Greg? A medal for being cold? I stepped a little closer, not threatening, just deliberate. No, I said, voice low, calm. I just want you to understand that your opinion no longer matters. That was the moment the mask cracked. Fully. The scowl faltered. Her shoulders sagged. For the first time, she looked like someone who truly didn't know what came next. You're not even angry, she whispered, more to herself than to me. You don't even care. I looked her dead in the eye. You were the storm. Now you're just weathered wood. She opened her mouth again, but nothing came out. No more barbs. No more insults. Just air and regret. I gave you everything, she said quietly, as if the statement alone could rewrite the timeline. You took everything, I corrected, and still ended up empty. She stood there in the hallway, arms limp, eyes darting like a cornered animal, her brain rifling through every tactic. Rage, seduction, guilt, fear, but finding none of them effective now. So what now? She asked finally, voice thin, eyes dull. You walk away? Just like that. I shrugged. I already did. You just noticed. She blinked fast, once, twice, and for the first time I saw fear. Not the fear of consequence, but the fear of insignificance. Of losing not the argument, but the audience. You loved me, she said, like it was her last defense, her final magic trick. I did, I replied, and then I saw you. Silence stretched between us. Heavy, suffocating. She had nothing left. No power, no dignity, no control over the room, the mood, or me. And that, I think, was the part she never prepared for. The moment where her words bounced off empty space instead of sinking into skin. The moment she realized the war was over, and the silence she feared was the sound of her own defeat. The morning after the tasting, I woke early, not groggy, not bitter, just resolved. Mia was still asleep, unaware that the chessboard she thought she was dominating had already flipped, and she was now playing pieces I no longer acknowledged. I began by closing the gates, quietly, without fanfare. I accessed our joint accounts and initiated a security freeze under financial fraud protocols, something we'd agreed to years ago, ironically, to protect our future. The irony made me smile. Then I created a separate personal account under my LLC and transferred all business-related funds out of reach, one by one. Everything tied to the vineyard project, the relocation, the legal fees, it was all now under my control. Next came the paper trail. I organized every document, emails, bank statements, travel itineraries, and the video stills of her stepping into that Marseille hotel, hand in hand with Daniel. I didn't hoard them in a folder. I curated them like a dossier, complete with dates, timestamps, witness logs. I sent copies to a private cloud and 3 offline drives, one for my lawyer, one for backup, one for leverage. Then came the digital purge. I revoked her admin rights from the Vineyard Project drive, blocked her from all brand assets, disabled her work email access. She didn't notice immediately, which meant she wasn't paying attention, exactly the kind of arrogance I was counting on. Next, I scheduled meetings with both our real estate agent in Bordeaux and the financial planner managing our France portfolio. I told them the move was postponed indefinitely, citing domestic restructuring. No lies, no drama. Just clinical precision. I also quietly voided the power of attorney documents she had tried to slip past me weeks earlier. Those would have let her finalize French property purchases in my name. Not anymore. I notified the French consulate that all submitted applications using my identity were to be frozen due to suspected fraud. I filed the request under diplomatic flagging, citing the exact legal codes. Bureaucracy might be slow, but it doesn't ignore paperwork that well-crafted. Then came the social network, the real scalpel. I sent private, detailed messages to a carefully chosen list of people, her parents, her sister, 3 of her closest friends, and 1 former colleague she admired. The message was always the same. Polite, factual. I wanted you to hear it from me. Mia and I are separating due to sustained dishonesty and a breach of mutual trust. I'm handling it privately, but I thought you deserved clarity. I attached no evidence. Just enough truth to seed doubt, to fracture the carefully preserved image she sold them. That's all it would take. She'd spend months plugging holes in a dam I'd already drained. And then, the masterpiece. I booked her a flight. One way. Back to Marseille. The exact same hotel where she had met him. I sent the reservation to her email with a brief note. Since you worked so hard for this dream, I thought I'd make sure you arrived in style. The flight was set for 3 days later. Just long enough for the weight of my silence to start collapsing her world from within. But I didn't stop there. I filed an anonymous tip to the French visa processing agency that an applicant had submitted forged cohabitation documents and misrepresented marital status. Again, Just the facts. No accusations. Just precision. They wouldn't reject her immediately, but the red flag would freeze the entire process long enough to ruin any momentum she thought she had. She would call the consulate. They would tell her it's under review, and that vague little phrase would haunt her. Meanwhile, I packed. Not like a man fleeing, but like a man transitioning. Everything I cared about, everything I'd built, everything that mattered went with me. The rest? I left. Her things, our things, the house, it was all just scenery in a show she no longer directed. I scheduled the divorce petition filing for the morning after her flight was supposed to depart. Not before, no. That would give her leverage. I wanted her airborne, in limbo, detached. I listed my reasons under irreconcilable differences, attaching no drama, only documentation. No court theatrics. Just inevitability. She still hadn't caught on. She was still operating under the illusion that I was licking wounds, nursing heartbreak, maybe watching old videos of us on the couch like some wounded dog. But I wasn't. I was auditing her world and repossessing every inch of it she'd built with my name, my trust, and my silence. She thought she'd bought herself time. She didn't realize time was the very thing I was weaponizing. Every hour I gave her was already filled with consequences she hadn't yet encountered. And when the day came, the morning she realized her email no longer worked, her visa was frozen, her bank account wasn't joined, and her support network had gone eerily quiet, she'd look around and see nothing but the wreckage of a plan that had died in silence. And I'd be long gone. Unreachable. Free. The collapse came during her sister's engagement party, an elegant, tightly curated affair at a private event loft downtown, all white roses, champagne flutes, and that kind of soft jazz that makes everyone speak in whispers. Mia had insisted we attend together weeks earlier, before the unraveling began, before she knew just how thoroughly she'd been found out. I never took it off the calendar. I simply let it approach, day by day, like a closing gate. She arrived ahead of me, dressed impeccably in a navy satin wrap, and that silver pendant she used to wear only on our anniversaries. I walked in 10 minutes later. Alone. Calm. Composed. No fanfare. Just enough presence to shift the energy of the room like a quiet draft through a sealed window. I watched her spot me from across the room. Her posture stiffened. She tilted her head, smiled a little too quickly, then turned back toward the group surrounding her, her sister, her parents, a few family friends from out of town. That's when the first fissure appeared. Her father didn't return the smile. Her mother, always so quick to fuss over her hair or jewelry, didn't touch her at all. And her sister, whose trust Mia had treated like an inexhaustible bank account, was standing closer to me. We chatted briefly, pleasantly. Then the moment arrived, precisely timed, like a curtain rising. Her sister tapped her glass for attention. "Before we toast," she said, voice delicate but firm, "I want to take a moment to acknowledge someone here who's shown grace under circumstances none of us saw coming." Everyone turned. I shifted. Mia froze. "Greg," her sister said, facing me now, "you didn't have to come. But the fact that you did says everything." Mia's hand trembled around her glass. "What is this?" She laughed, brittle and false. "Some kind of stage sympathy act?" She tried to play it off, tossing her hair back, but the energy had changed. The people who once orbited her like satellites were now watching her as though from a distance, as if unsure how close they wanted to stand. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Her father cleared his throat. "I saw the messages," he said, quietly, eyes down. "In the video." That was the sound of a pin hitting marble. No one moved. Mia turned to him sharply. "Dad, those are out of context. You don't understand." Her voice cracked mid-sentence. "Don't," her mother said, without looking up from her champagne. "Just don't." Someone in the back coughed. A soft gasp from an aunt. And then her best friend, her oldest confidant, the one who used to drink wine with her and gossip about everyone else, walked straight to me and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You deserved better," she said, eyes cutting across the room. "We all thought you were the quiet one. Turns out you were just the honest one." Mia laughed again, louder now, desperate. "Oh, come on," she snapped. "You're all seriously buying this? You think Greg's some saint?" He monitored me, invaded my privacy. He set me up, but her voice was thin, her words scrambled. Nobody responded. The silence around her was now a vacuum. Even Daniel, her lover, who had shown up uninvited and was loitering near the back wall, slipped out the side door like a coward the moment he realized what was unfolding. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. Her jaw clenched. She scanned the room for an ally and found none. You think you're all so righteous, she hissed, her eyes finally locking onto mine. Is this what you wanted, Greg? A public stoning? I just stood there, unmoving, watching, the same way you'd watch a building you once designed collapse under the weight of its own faulty architecture. Say something, she screamed, her voice finally losing its shape. But I didn't. My silence was the verdict. My stillness was the sentence. Her lips trembled. Her eyes blinked too fast, too often. You don't even care, she whispered. You're not even angry. I tilted my head slightly, then gave her one look, measured, neutral, final. That was the moment it broke. Not with a scream, or a fall, or anything cinematic. Just a slow, helpless collapse inward. Shoulders sinking, chest hollowing. Her hand went to her pendant like it could anchor her to the moment before everything cracked. But the moment was already gone, and everyone saw it. She wasn't the dazzling, misunderstood woman anymore. She was just a liar with no script left to perform. And I, still calm, still composed, remained exactly where I stood, watching her finally see herself through the eyes of everyone who once believed her. It happened fast, too fast for anyone to contain. One minute I was walking past the dessert table to retrieve my coat. The next Mia stormed across the room, eyes glassy, cheeks flushed with the kind of reckless energy only humiliation can ignite. You smug son of a bitch, she hissed, loud enough that every fork in the room stopped midair. You think this makes you some kind of hero? Broadcasting my life like I'm some cautionary tale. Her voice cracked under the weight of her fury, and people were already circling, forming that inevitable social perimeter like spectators at a slow-motion crash. Broadcast? I echoed, turning toward her with a calm so steady it almost seemed rehearsed. No, Mia. You did that all on your own. I just stopped protecting your fiction. Her face contorted. You stalked me. You weaponized my mistakes. You calculated this entire thing just to play the victim with better lighting. Her mother stood nearby, eyes wide, hand frozen over a half-filled wine glass. Her father looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. You want honesty, Mia? I said, stepping forward now, voice louder. Fine. You were never in love with me. You were in love with what I built. With the life I made safe enough for you to sneak around inside of. There were murmurs now, gasps, sharp whispers. Someone's phone held at an angle that looked suspiciously like it was recording. You're twisting everything, she screamed, voice ragged. You made me feel invisible. You micromanaged everything. Every plan, every account, every goddamn moment. Until I didn't even know who I was anymore. I laughed once, sharp and bitter. You didn't lose yourself, Mia. You gave yourself away. To a man who couldn't even stay in the room tonight. The crowd turned toward the door where Daniel had been last seen. Gone. Just like the spine Mia thought he had. You made me a villain, she shouted, spinning to the faces around her. This is character assassination. Emotional abuse. No. I snapped. This is accountability. Something you've spent your entire life dodging behind charm and wine tastings and filtered posts about self-care. She moved to slap me then, not out of violence, but desperation, but her mother caught her wrist. Enough, her mother said softly, her voice like glass cracking. You lied to us. You used him. Mom, you don't understand, she begged, suddenly childlike, suddenly pathetic. He manipulated this whole thing. You don't know what it was like living with someone who always needed to be right. I stepped closer, and silence fell again. Needing to be right. I said, voice low, tight. I didn't need to be right, Mia. I needed to believe you were decent. I needed to believe you had enough respect for me to end it before you buried knives in my back. But you couldn't even give me that. She was trembling now, mascara starting to run, her composure gone completely. You act like I'm the only one who made mistakes, she screamed. You were cold. You were distant. You stopped trying. No, I shot back. I stopped sacrificing my soul to carry a woman who never once turned around to see if I was still walking beside her. You talk about feeling invisible? Try watching the person you love disappear one lie at a time while smiling in your face. People were trying to usher others away now, her aunt tugging at her sleeve, a friend whispering, let's take this outside. But no one moved. No one wanted to miss it. Her best friend was crying. My brother just stood there, arms folded, jaw clenched, like he'd been waiting years for this truth to surface. You'll regret this, Mia whispered then, hoarse, desperate. You'll end up alone. You'll look back and realize you destroyed the only person who ever loved me. I cut in. You didn't love me. You loved what I made possible. And the second it no longer centered you, you looked for someone shinier. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Just air and panic. Look around, Mia, I said, gesturing at the room. This is your truth now. These are your people. And they're finally seeing what I've been surviving. Her father put down his glass and walked away. Her mother followed. Her friend, once her shadow, walked past her and stopped at my side. We're done here, I said simply, adjusting my coat. She tried one last time, Greg, please, voice soft, breaking, pathetic. But I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I turned and walked through that room with every eye on me, not as a man broken by betrayal, but as the man who had dismantled a lie in front of its architect and made her watch it crumble with nothing left to stand on. 2 months later, she was gone from everything, erased not by spite, but by the vacuum she created herself. Her name no longer came up at gatherings, not even as a cautionary whisper. She was fired from the consulting agency where she once led personal growth seminars. Turns out clients don't like mentors with scandal attached to their name, especially when those clients are connected to the very people she betrayed. Her social media accounts were wiped clean, either by her or by the digital silence that followed. Friends who once cheered her posts, shared her quotes about evolving and boundaries, quietly removed her. Her own sister blocked her. Her mother deleted every shared photo from the family drive. No calls. No sympathy. No more illusions. Daniel? Gone the second the paperwork fell apart. Once the visa was revoked and the whispers reached his employers, he vanished like a rat diving off a ship he'd helped set on fire. She tried reaching out to him twice, first with a text, then a voicemail. Both unanswered. She packed up and left the city. Moved to some gray little town in the middle of nowhere, working part-time at a boutique where no one knew her face, her name, or her history. She lived in a rented studio above a laundromat and walked home with groceries and paper bags, hood up, head down, hoping anonymity would somehow feel like peace. It didn't. I know because she told me. The message came one night, late, after midnight. A voice memo, shaky and breathless. I still love you. I still think about everything, every quiet thing you ever did for me. I thought I needed more. I didn't realize you were it. I listened to it once, then deleted it. No reply. A week later, she showed up at my doorstep. No makeup. Eyes swollen. Dressed like the wind had been pushing her around all day. She looked smaller, like someone had drained the arrogance out of her frame. She stood there in the soft porch light and just stared at me. I lost everything, she said. My job, my family, my future. I don't even know who I am anymore. I didn't move. She stepped closer. Please. Just talk to me. Just scream at me. Tell me I ruined you. Give me something, Greg. Anything. I don't know how to live with this silence. I watched her for a long moment, then finally said, You don't need my help to live with silence, Mia. You taught it to yourself. Her lip trembled, but I wasn't done. You didn't just ruin us. You made a religion out of pretending I didn't exist. You prayed at the altar of your own importance until you forgot the difference between love and leverage. She began to cry, quiet at first, then louder, like the sound had nowhere else to go. I was wrong, she whispered. I know that now. And I don't want to fix things, I just want forgiveness. I looked her dead in the eye and said, I forgave you the second I stopped caring. She looked like she'd been shot, like her lungs had collapsed and she'd only now realized breathing was a borrowed luxury. She stepped back. Her hands fell to her sides like weights. So that's it, she said. That's really it? I nodded once. You're not the woman I married, Mia. You're not even the mistake I thought you were. You're just the aftermath. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. There was nothing left to say. She turned and walked off the porch slowly, like every step was heavier than the one before. I stood there until her figure dissolved into the dark. No satisfaction. No pain. Just stillness. That was the moment I knew I had won, not because she lost, but because I was finally free. Thank you for listening to my story. I'm curious, where are you listening from? Did this hit you the way it hit me when I lived it? Let me know.